Picture this. You're 45, maybe 50, sitting at your kitchen table on a Sunday morning, coffee in hand, scrolling through your phone. You see an ad for retirement planning, and you think, I've got time. I'll figure it out later. Well, I'm here to tell you, as someone who learned the hard way, that later comes faster than you think, and it brings surprises you never saw coming. My name is Sarah, and 3 years ago, I turned 65. I thought I had it all figured out. I had a decent 401k, Social Security kicking in, and a paid-off house. I was ready for the golden years. Sleeping in, traveling, maybe taking up watercolor painting. But here's what nobody tells you about retirement. It's not just about having enough money. It's about understanding what your life actually becomes when you stop working. And trust me, it's nothing like what you imagine. Today, I'm going to share the 10 most important things I wish someone had told me before I turned 65. These aren't just financial tips, though we'll cover those too. These are the real truths about retirement that can make the difference between simply surviving your golden years and actually thriving in them. So grab that coffee, get comfortable, and let's dive into what retirement really looks like. Truth number 1. Your expenses don't magically disappear. I remember my financial advisor telling me, "Don't worry, Sarah. Your expenses will naturally decrease in retirement." Naturally decrease. What a beautiful phrase. What a complete fantasy. Here's what actually happened. Yes, I stopped buying work clothes and paying for gas to commute. But you know what I started paying for? Healthcare premiums that made my eyes water. Home maintenance that I used to ignore because I was never home. And hobbies. Oh, the hobbies. Remember that watercolor painting I mentioned? Turns out, good art supplies aren't cheap. Neither is the pottery class I joined. Or the gym membership I finally had time to use. Or the dinners out because cooking for one felt depressing. The rule of thumb used to be that you'd need about 70% of your pre-retirement income. But recent studies suggest it's closer to 85% or even 90%. Why? Because retirement isn't about spending less. It's about spending differently. You'll spend less on work-related expenses, sure. But you'll spend more on healthcare, entertainment, travel, and all those projects you've been putting off. That deck you've been meaning to repair? The kitchen you've wanted to renovate? Retirement gives you time to notice everything that needs fixing. My advice? When you're planning, assume you'll need at least 80% of your current income. And if you're someone who's been living paycheck to paycheck, thinking retirement will somehow be cheaper, think again. Start planning now for what you'll actually need, not what you hope you'll need. Truth number 2. Social Security is not enough, and it's more complicated than you think. Let's talk about Social Security. I thought I understood it. I mean, how complicated could it be, right? You work, you pay in, you retire, you get money. Simple. Not simple. First, the shocking truth. The average Social Security benefit in 2024 is about $1,800 per month. That's roughly $21,600 per year. Can you live on $21,600 per year? Because I couldn't. But here's what really caught me off guard. The timing game. I knew I could start collecting at 62, but I didn't realize how much that would cost me. If you retire at 62, you get about 75% of your full benefit. If you wait until your full retirement age, which for me was 66, you get 100%. But here's the kicker. If you wait until 70, you get 132% of your full benefit. That's a huge difference. For me, it meant choosing between $1,350 per month at 62 or $2,376 per month at 70. I took the middle road and claimed at 66, getting about $1,800. But looking back, if I could have afforded to wait until 70, I'd be getting an extra $576 every single month for the rest of my life. And don't even get me started on the spousal benefits, survivor benefits, and the earnings test that can reduce your benefits if you keep working. The Social Security Administration has a website, but navigating it feels like trying to solve a Rubik's Cube blindfolded. My recommendation? Don't try to figure this out alone. Meet with a Social Security representative at least 2 years before you plan to retire. Understand all your options. And remember, Social Security was never meant to be your sole source of retirement income. It's supposed to be one leg of a 3-legged stool, along with employer-sponsored retirement plans and personal savings. Truth number 3. Healthcare costs will shock you. Nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for healthcare costs in retirement. When I was working, I had employer-sponsored health insurance. I paid about $150 per month out of my paycheck, and I thought that was expensive. I had no idea. The moment I retired, I lost that coverage. Sure, I could continue it through Cobra, but that would cost me $847 per month. For the same coverage I was paying $150 for. That's when I realized my employer had been paying the other $700. So I looked into Medicare. Medicare is fantastic. Don't get me wrong. But it's not free, and it doesn't cover everything. Medicare Part A is free if you've worked long enough, but Part B costs about $170 per month. Part D for prescription drugs is another $30 to $50 per month. And if you want a Medigap policy to cover what Medicare doesn't, that's another $100 to $300 per month. Then there are the out-of-pocket costs. Medicare has deductibles, copays, and coinsurance. That routine colonoscopy? You'll pay 20% of the cost even with Medicare. Those prescription drugs? You'll hit a coverage gap where you pay more. I'll never forget the day I went to pick up my blood pressure medication. Something I'd been taking for years. With my old insurance, it cost me $10. With Medicare Part D, it was $47. For the same exact pills. And here's something that really surprised me. Dental and vision care. Medicare doesn't cover routine dental work or eye exams. Want to get your teeth cleaned? That's out of pocket. Need new glasses? Out of pocket. According to Fidelity, the average 65-year-old couple will spend $315,000 on healthcare throughout retirement. That's not including long-term care, which Medicare barely covers. My advice? Start a health savings account if you're eligible, and max it out. The money grows tax-free and can be used for medical expenses in retirement. And when you're planning your retirement budget, don't just think about premiums. Think about the out-of-pocket costs too. Truth number 4. You'll have more time than you know what to do with. For 40 years, I dreamed about having more time. Time to read, time to travel, time to finally organize that garage. Time felt like the most precious commodity I never had enough of. Then I retired, and suddenly I had 40 to 50 extra hours per week. That's like getting an entire extra day added to your week, every week. At first, it was wonderful. I slept in. I read entire books in a single sitting. I took long walks and actually noticed the seasons changing. But after about 3 months, something unexpected happened. I got restless. I'd wake up on a Tuesday morning and think, now what? I'd finished my morning coffee, read the news, and it was only 9 a.m. I had the entire day stretching ahead of me with no meetings, no deadlines, no obligations. Here's what nobody tells you. Retirement can be boring. Not all the time, but more often than you'd expect. When you don't have to be anywhere or do anything, it's easy to fall into a routine of nothing. I started to miss the structure of work. Not the stress, not the politics, but the sense of purpose, the deadlines, the feeling that what I was doing mattered. I missed having colleagues to talk to and problems to solve. But here's the good news. Once I recognized this, I could do something about it. I started volunteering at the local food bank. I joined a book club. I took that pottery class I mentioned. I even started a small consulting business, working about 10 hours per week. The key is to replace the structure you're losing. Don't just retire from something. Retire to something. Have a plan for how you'll spend those extra 40 to 50 hours per week, Because, "I'll figure it out," isn't a plan. Truth number 5. Your relationships will change, and some will end. This one caught me completely off guard. I thought retirement would give me more time to nurture my relationships, to be a better friend, sister, and grandmother. In some ways it did. But in other ways, it revealed just how much of my social life was tied to work. Think about it. If you're like most people, you spend more waking hours with your coworkers than with your family. You share coffee breaks, lunch conversations, and the daily dramas of office life. These people become your friends, your confidants, your social network. Then you retire, and suddenly you're not part of that world anymore. You're not invited to the impromptu happy hours or the lunch discussions about the latest office gossip. You try to stay in touch, but it's hard when you're no longer sharing the same daily experiences. I remember getting together with my former colleagues about 6 months after I retired. They were talking about some new office policy, complaining about a difficult client, discussing who was up for promotion. I sat there feeling like I was listening to a foreign language. I was no longer part of their world. But here's the harder truth. Some of your relationships were built on convenience and proximity, not deep connection. When you remove the work context, you might discover that you don't actually have that much in common with people you considered good friends. On the flip side, retirement can strengthen other relationships. I've grown closer to my siblings, my adult children, and old friends I'd lost touch with. I've made new friends through volunteer work and hobbies. My advice? Don't wait until you retire to nurture relationships outside of work. Join clubs, volunteer, participate in community activities while you're still working. Build a social network that doesn't depend on your job title or workplace. And be prepared for some loneliness, especially in the first year. It's normal, and it's temporary if you're proactive about building new connections. Truth number 6. The stock market doesn't care about your retirement timeline. I retired in January 2021. I thought I was being smart. I'd been watching the market for months, my 401k was at an all-time high, and everything looked stable. Then 2022 happened. By October 2022, my retirement portfolio had lost about 20% of its value. 20%. That's not just numbers on a screen. That's real money I needed to live on gone. Suddenly, I was facing what financial experts call sequence of returns risk. This is the danger of poor investment returns early in retirement, when you're starting to withdraw money from your accounts. Here's how it works. Let's say you have $500,000 in your 401k and you're planning to withdraw 4% per year. That's $20,000. If the market drops 20% in your first year of retirement, you're not just losing $100,000 in paper value. You're withdrawing $20,000 from an account that's now worth $400,000 instead of $500,000. That's a withdrawal rate of 5% instead of 4%. Do that for a few years, and you can seriously damage your long-term financial security. The market might recover, but you've already taken money out at the worst possible time. I was lucky. I had enough cash savings to avoid touching my investments for about 18 months. But watching my nest egg shrink month after month was terrifying. I found myself checking my account balances obsessively, losing sleep over market volatility. This is why financial advisors recommend having a cash cushion. Enough money in savings and CDs to cover 1 to 2 years of expenses. This gives you flexibility to avoid selling investments when the market is down. Also, consider a bond ladder or other conservative investments for your near-term needs. Yes, the returns are lower, but you're not gambling with money you need to live on. The stock market is a wonderful tool for building wealth over time, but it's a terrible place to park money you need in the next few years. Truth number 7. You might want to work, but finding work isn't easy. Here's something I never expected. 6 months into retirement, I wanted to work again. Not full-time, not the stressful job I'd left, but something meaningful and flexible. Maybe it was the boredom I mentioned earlier, or maybe it was watching my savings account shrink faster than I'd planned. Either way, I found myself browsing job websites, thinking about consulting opportunities, wondering if I could turn my hobby into a small business. But here's the reality check. Finding work in your 60s and 70s is challenging. Age discrimination is real, even though it's illegal. Employers worry about healthcare costs, technology skills, and whether older workers can adapt to new ways of doing things. I applied for several part-time positions in my field. I had 35 years of experience, excellent references, and a strong track record. But I rarely heard back. When I did get interviews, I could sense the hesitation. Was I overqualified? Would I be satisfied with part-time work? Could I learn new software systems? I finally found work through networking. A former colleague recommended me for a consulting project. It was perfect, 10 to 15 hours per week, flexible schedule, work I enjoyed. But it took 8 months to find, and it only happened because of a personal connection. The truth is, if you think you might want to work in retirement, start planning while you're still employed. Build consulting relationships, develop skills that translate to contract work, or explore franchise opportunities. Don't wait until you're retired to figure out what you want to do next. And be realistic about the pay. Retirement work often pays less than what you're used to. But if you're doing it for fulfillment rather than necessity, that might be okay. Truth number 8. Your family dynamics will shift. When I was working, I had a clear role in my family. I was the busy one, the one who brought work stress home, the one who was always checking emails during family dinners. My adult children were understanding when I missed school plays or had to reschedule visits. Then I retired, and suddenly I had all the time in the world. I was available for every family event, every grandchild's soccer game, every holiday gathering. I thought this would be wonderful. It was, but it also created unexpected dynamics. My children, now in their 30s and 40s, were used to me being busy and somewhat unavailable. They'd built their own routines, their own support systems. When I became more available, it sometimes felt like I was overstepping. I remember offering to pick up my grandchildren from school every day. I thought I was being helpful. But I later realized I was taking away something my daughter-in-law valued. The routine of picking up her own kids, the chance to hear about their day firsthand. Here's what I learned. Retirement changes your role in the family, but it doesn't necessarily change everyone else's expectations. Your adult children have their own lives, their own routines, their own ways of handling things. They love you, but they don't necessarily need you to be more involved in their daily lives. The key is communication. Talk to your family about what retirement means for everyone. Ask how you can be helpful without being intrusive. Respect boundaries while also establishing your own. And remember, your adult children want you to be happy and fulfilled, not just available. Focus on building your own retirement life, not on inserting yourself more deeply into theirs. Truth number 9. Technology will either be your friend or your biggest frustration. I thought I was pretty tech-savvy. I could use email, navigate social media, even video chat with my grandchildren. But retirement introduced me to a whole new world of technology I'd never had to deal with. Medicare's website. Online banking with multiple accounts. Telehealth appointments. Digital prescription management. Investment platform apps. Social Security's online portal. Each one seemed designed by someone who'd never met an actual retiree. I spent 2 hours trying to create an account on Medicare.gov. 2 hours. The security questions were things like, what was your first pet's name? I've had dozens of pets over 65 years. The password requirements were more complex than nuclear launch codes. But here's the thing. Once I got past the initial frustration, technology became incredibly helpful. I can deposit checks with my phone camera. I can order groceries online. I can video chat with my grandchildren who live across the country. I can take virtual tours of places I want to visit. The key is to approach technology with patience and curiosity rather than fear and frustration. Take advantage of free computer classes at your library. Ask your grandchildren to teach you their favorite apps. Don't be afraid to try new things. And remember, you don't have to master everything. Pick the technologies that will genuinely improve your life and focus on those. Ignore the rest. Truth number 10. You'll discover who you really are. For most of my adult life, I defined myself by my job. I was Sarah the marketing director, Sarah the problem solver, Sarah the go-to person for crisis management. My identity was wrapped up in what I did for a living. Then I retired, and suddenly I had to figure out who I was without that title, without that role, without that purpose. It was unsettling at first. When people asked, "What do you do?" I'd say, "I'm retired," and then feel like I needed to explain what I used to do. As if my past work gave me more credibility than my present life. But slowly, something beautiful happened. I started to discover parts of myself that had been buried under decades of work responsibilities. I'd always been creative, but I'd never had time to explore it. I'd always been a good listener, but I'd never had space to really be present for others. I started volunteering at a literacy program, helping adults learn to read. I discovered I loved teaching, something I'd never tried before. I joined a hiking group and learned I was braver than I thought. I started a small garden and found peace in nurturing growing things. Retirement gives you permission to explore parts of yourself that work might have suppressed. Maybe you're naturally an artist, but you became an accountant. Maybe you're a natural caregiver, but you worked in finance. Maybe you're an adventurer, but you spent 40 years behind a desk. This is your chance to experiment, to try new things, to discover what brings you joy rather than what pays the bills. It's never too late to become who you were meant to be. The bottom line: retirement is not what you think. So here we are, at the end of our conversation. If you've made it this far, you're probably feeling one of two things. Either you're terrified about retirement, or you're excited about the possibilities. I hope it's the latter. Yes, retirement is challenging. Yes, it's more expensive than you think. Yes, it comes with surprises and adjustments you never anticipated. But it's also an incredible opportunity. For the first time in decades, you get to choose how to spend your time. You can sleep in or get up early. You can travel or stay home. You can volunteer or start a business. You can be social or enjoy solitude. You can pursue passions you never had time for. But here's the key: retirement doesn't just happen to you. It's something you create. The people who thrive in retirement are the ones who plan not just financially, but emotionally and socially. They think about who they want to be, not just how much money they'll need. So if you're still working, start planning now. Not just your 401k contributions, but your life contributions. What will give you purpose? What will keep you connected to others? What will challenge you and help you grow? And if you're already retired, or about to retire, remember this: it's never too late to reinvent yourself. The first year of retirement is often the hardest as you adjust to this new phase of life. But it gets better. You'll find your rhythm, your purpose, your new normal. Retirement isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of a new chapter. And like any good story, it's what you make of it that matters. The golden years can truly be golden, but only if you're willing to do the work to make them shine. Thank you for spending this time with me. I hope my hard-earned lessons help make your retirement journey a little easier and a lot more fulfilling. Remember, you've got this. And your best years might still be ahead of you.